Welcome to the Course of Action podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and your favorite platform worldwide, including the veteran-owned and operated Reeves Across America radio network, every Monday at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Course of Action. My guest today is Matt Gallagher, who has a new book out called Daybreak. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on, and I'm curious to hear about the book and kind of some of your writing career and kind of how you got to the point where you're at now, because I think you have two other books besides Daybreak.
Correct.
And
That's
then,
correct,
yes. But you've written for, I think I saw ESPN in your bio and a couple other publications. So how did you get started in writing, and what was like your first big article?
So back when, this is 2008 in Iraq, I was a young scout platoon leader in a combat outpost just north of Baghdad. It was during the surge, during counterinsurgency stuff. It was like a lifetime ago in many ways, also just like last week in other ways.
Right.
But I was kind of a punk lieutenant that was keeping a blog about our day-to-day life. You know, it was very different than the kind of tour I think we trained for. We were doing all kinds of different stuff in terms of, I don't know, just trying to bring peace to a civil war, little corner of Iraq that had been pretty messy.
Mm-hmm.
The blog got shut down by my chain of command, which probably was within their right. I made fun of my battalion commander. I didn't think it would get back to him. Of course, that's not how the internet works. Got back to him in about 2 hours. Young lieutenant got chewed out a lot on a lot of different carpets. But what happened was it got some random, all kinds of weird attention. At that point in the war, really, America had kind of mostly forgotten about it. But the Washington Post did a big article on it because it was not an anti-war blog by any means. It was just kind of about our day to day. And so I think just kind of, it was just a way for maybe people to pay attention again for a little bit. And so I started getting all these kind of notes from agents and editors asking if I'd ever thought about being a writer. And I didn't really know much about that world. I kind of thought books were for kind of old men when they get back and turn gray. But I just kind of saved the contact info and said, hey, we got 9 more months over here. Let me know if you still want to be in touch. Most of them did not want to be, it was a very kind of flash in the pan moment for most of them, but some people did stay in touch with me. And ultimately, long story short, my first book grew out of that blog. And it was just kind of it was a nonfiction book. It was just kind of a day-to-day journal about one scout platoon's efforts during the surge. And I got out of the Army, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. My then girlfriend, now wife, was a New Yorker. So I said, what the hell? Might as well move to New York, try to be a writer, and try to live in the same place as this woman I care about. And sure. That's kind of how my writing life got started. It was just kind of one person, one veteran, trying to figure it all out in, I guess this would be now 2009, 2010.
And then how did you get the attention of all these other publications that you wrote for? I know I saw ESPN, but there are other ones, right?
There is, yeah. Esquire, I've written a number of articles for. Honestly, I'm not good at anything else. So like my first article that I remember writing was for AOL News back in the day. It was a review of The Hurt Locker and the parts of the movie that I liked and the parts of the movie I didn't like. And just kind of kept grinding away. Some of it was just kind of like being a veteran in New York, right? Keeping in touch with my people that I'd served with, dealing with the different politics. The kind of part of being a veteran that I think is a shock for all of us when we get back is like how politicized we get, right? And we by both Republicans and Democrats,
mm-hmm.
and like. It's so different than kind of the human element that makes up your day-to-day life in uniform. So, I think my first kind of breakthrough essay was probably for the New York Times back in 2011. As I got further away from my own service, I realized that it was kind of important to tell other people's stories, right? There's only so many times I could write about myself and what what my platoon did. Like the ESPN article you mentioned, that's about this real cool guy named Dakuna Robinson. He's a fellow Iraq veteran who got back and was dealing with all kinds of issues and became a through hiker. And he was the first Black American to through hike all three large American trails: the Central American Trail, the one through Central Colorado, the Appalachian Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. And I just kind of went out there for a few days and spent some time with him and told his story.
Cool.
The Esquire articles. They've sent me to Ukraine a few times, which we'll get into later. But I think I initially, honestly, man, they rejected me like 10 times, but I just kind of kept at it. And my initial story for them was a story. They wanted to do kind of a story about young people, people who were born after 9/11 that were just joining the military. So they flew me down to Puerto Rico, and I got to know this real brave kid that was becoming an infantryman. Right. And in many ways, it's a very universal story. Kids from all over the United States wanting to serve their country. In many ways, it was different. Right. Born after 9/11, it had a whole kind of different generational feel to it than people my age joining up. So, I hope in my small little way with my stories and my articles and my fiction that I've kind of been able to, I don't know, make people understand who serves and why, and also get people who do serve to remember that it's a big country out there. We're not that different from the country that formed us, even if sometimes we feel like we are kind of separate and apart.
Yeah. Let's go back to your blog. I got a question I want you to weigh in on.
Sure.
So 2009, 2010, when you're doing this blog time frame, and they shut it down. Much different than today's military, where there's military members out there as influencers on TikTok and Instagram and all that, in uniform, doing things, expressing themselves, being creative, having fun with it, but even poking fun at the military. I see it all the time. Right. I follow a lot of those veteran pages, and I love them. It's great content. How has it changed, in your opinion, from back then where you were just speaking your mind, kind of documenting your day, to now they're even poking fun at themselves and the military as a whole?
Yeah, it does seem like a very different military than the one I remember in that regard.
Me too.
Looking back, I mean, the best thing they could have, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a bit out of line. My colonel was an asshole, but you can't have lieutenants posting that the colonel's an asshole, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. The best thing they could have done is made me publicly apologize, have him blog right back. Here's a guest post by Lieutenant Colonel with his opinion, right? There was a way it became this firestorm. It became a Washington Post story because it was kind of an old Army instinct, just smash, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like they've gotten much smarter. I mean, sometimes you see, with the, I don't know, I'm 41. Sometimes with the dancing and the TikToks, I'm just like, I'm not a young man anymore. I don't get it, and I don't get it. But ultimately, I think it is kind of doing the same thing that my blog did back in the day, which is humanizing the people in uniform. It's reminding people, whether American or just across the globe, that hey, by and large, these are just teenagers and 20-somethings serving their country, doing the best they can. Whatever orders they're given to execute, that's politics. But thank God we have a military that's separate and apart from that, right? For good reason. And if they need to dance on TikTok to do it, that's cool. Sometimes you see people get really mad about videos saying, "Hey, why'd you join the Army?" or whatever, and they're 20-something specialists. Of course, they're not gonna say, they're on video. They're not gonna give this super patriotic answer. They're gonna give the honest answer that a 20-year-old has.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of earnest, nostalgic stuff. I don't know. At least in my experience, that's all there, but that comes later. That comes with reflection. When you're 20, you're still sarcastic. You're ironic.
Yeah.
You're on video. You're not going to say all that stuff. Of course, you're going to say, "Serve my," for the college money. You're gonna give these kind of pithy answers. It's the most natural thing in the world. So when I see people get really upset about it on social media, I'm just like, either you're too old and you don't remember what it was like to be in uniform, or you actually never knew anybody that's ever joined up, because that's the most honest 20-something answer that's ever going to be out there.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think it helps with recruitment, in a
Sure.
way. And you said it humanizes people. I agree with that totally because, for the longest time, it was like, hey, be careful what you post on social media. Be careful how you portray yourself in public and blah, 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 blah. So then it was like, okay, well, now in order to reach the demographic that they need to recruit new people in, they have to find those avenues. And those avenues are through the most trendy things like TikTok and the reels and the short videos and the memes and all that stuff. You got to go to your demographic. And the only way to do that is to recruit to it. Well, how effective is somebody doing a TikTok from a recruiting station saying, hey, come join the Army or the Air Force, But when people see guys in uniform doing their thing, being entrepreneurs, but serving at the same time, I think it places a less restrictive feel on it. And it says, listen, you can still be yourself and serve and take orders and do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's really important because I think today's generation is a little more openly defiant. I think they're a little bit more openly, I don't want to hear it, you tell me exactly how to think. I think they're very, very open and free thinkers. And I think that's good. I'm not bashing it at all, but I also think with that is going to come a very difficult way of maintaining good military order and discipline if you don't embrace it the right way. So if they feel like they're not so restricted all the time, when you say go take that hill, it's a little easier
Right.
for them to understand it because it's like, all right, this is just a part I got to suck it up and do because they're allowing me to still be me on the other side. Because if they
Totally.
weren't, people, nobody likes being told what to do all the time. But when you're told, hey, you can't even do anything that makes you happy,
Right.
but you got to do what I tell you to do all the time, people don't respond to that well.
No, I think that's exactly right. You got to meet people where they are, and if that's where the new generation is, God bless them. And I have no doubt that good NCOs are figuring out how to walk that balance every day, because you're exactly right. Their job is to take that hill ultimately when the day comes. Like how do you best prepare and get them ready for that moment?
And you weren't going to keep people off of social media. I mean, you just weren't. I mean, it's just.
No.
Do you embrace it fully? Well, no, because you got to maintain a certain level of OPSEC and all that. But, I think you still got to let people be them and just say, listen, don't make the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, don't make us look bad. Do your thing, behave, don't make us look bad. And in a way, it's a recruiting tool for free.
Totally. And the thing is that, like, I mean, God, it's like ancient history now, but like what was crazy back then is that like everything was top level down. Like they wanted battalion or brigade oversight over people's Facebook pages, blogs. That's impossible. It's just
Yeah.
impossible. Now in today's environment, you got a team sergeant who wakes up, checks his guys and gals Instagrams, Twitter. Okay, everything good. I'll see him at PT. Right? Like decentralize that.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. It was this weird, looking back on it, was this kind of weird last gasp of like top down oversight that was impossible with what was to come.
And I think as senior military leadership gets younger and we get some of the older Gulf War and 9/11, generals and officers out of, their careers and into retirement, you get the younger generation that's more understanding and embracing some of those things. And I had a base commander a couple of commanders ago who was very into social media, and that's how he used the Wings Facebook page to communicate directly to the populace of the base, both retirees, civilians, military, and he did little 30 to 45-second videos once a week, and that's how he directly communicated with people, and he just embraced it, and I think it worked really, really well, and I think you have to nowadays. You can't fight it.
No, that sounds like good leadership to me. Just another tool for your toolkit that you just simply have to have.
Yeah. So let's talk about Daybreak, your new book that's coming out soon, right? Or is it
Came
already
out two
out?
weeks ago.
2 weeks
Yeah, it
ago.
came out 2 weeks ago. Here, I'll plug it a little bit. Yeah.
There it is. So, what inspired you on this one as opposed to the other two?
So my previous works were kind of previous books were writings of reflection, right? Both fiction and nonfiction, but kind of looking back on a war that had happened and what it had meant for Americans and Iraqis alike. This one, which is set in Ukraine, is obviously about a war that's still occurring. 2 years ago now, uh, a friend of mine gave me a call. His wife's Ukrainian, and he said, "Hey, uh, we're going over to evacuate my in-laws. They're in Kyiv. They're elderly. We don't think they'll leave by themselves. Um, we also have a contact at the Lviv City Council. Lviv is a city in western Ukraine. They're looking for Western military veterans like us. He served in my friend served in Afghanistan. Um, just to give like 3 weeks training for civilians. And I'm not talking like this is not basic military training. This is just like basic self-defense survival,
Mm-hmm.
right? At this point in the war, they were worried that the Russian invasion might reach all the way out to the west. If somebody chooses to pick up a gun to defend their house, defend their neighborhood, can you just give some basic pointers? Thought I had about 48 hours to think it over. I've been out over a decade at this point, but I decided to go. It seemed like kind of a unique opportunity to kind of go help people in a real small but meaningful way.
Right.
Um, so three of us ended up going: Benjamin Bush and Adrian Bondenberger and myself, all combat veterans, and we spent 3 weeks. We went over there on our own dime. We spent 3 weeks with like bus drivers, teachers, welders, students, just real basic stuff like, hey, you hear drunk soldiers at your door, you have a teenage daughter, you have a gun and you decide to fight, don't sit in the middle of the room, right? Like here's some basic concealment procedures to give
Right.
yourself and your family a fighting chance. So I don't want to overstate, like we weren't doing kind of like Green Beret stuff, like
Yeah.
uh, training
Teach
a
them how to
guerrilla
stack
force.
up and kick in doors and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a little like just basics here and there, just to get them, because some of these people hadn't even fired a gun before. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
but it was still very fulfilling work. They showed up dutifully every day, ready to work. I mean, the war was very real at that point. The threat of invasion on all parts of Ukraine was incredibly tangible. Cruise missiles were hitting Lviv pretty much every day. We were
Yeah.
there when the Yavoriv, the NATO base, got hit, which killed a
Mhm.
bunch of like the kind of the people who were going over to join the International Legion.
Some
So
scary
it was real.
footage too. Some
Oh,
scary,
it
scary
was wild.
footage.
It was wild, and it was interesting. So I've been back over a couple times as a journalist, and what's interesting is in so many ways, war is always kind of going to be the same in terms of who decides to fight, who doesn't, uh, the camaraderie that's built up. But every Western vet that has fought that I've interviewed talks about kind of how different the sky is in terms of artillery and drones, cruise missiles. That's just something we took for granted in the desert wars that we fought. We controlled that, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have to. We had other concerns for sure. Don't get me wrong, but like uh, artillery and missiles and drones, it's just a different ballgame. And so, Daybreak kind of really grew out of that first trip over as a volunteer, and also two subsequent trips when I went back over as a journalist. And I think what makes this different than the previous two works was I'm writing about a war that's still going on, and like I'm trying to get people to care and try to engage with this because I think it matters. I think it's really important
It is.
for all kinds of reasons. But I know like I'm not a politician. I'm not a retired general. I can't go on CNN and talk about like the grand strategy and everything. But something I think I am pretty good at this point is kind of telling like the everyday human stories
Hmm.
of lives shaped by war, being impacted by war, and it's about everyday people. Main characters are a couple of Americans that go over. One goes to join the fight. The other's kind of looking for an old love, and also the Ukrainians. Like, we're trapped. We're absolutely trapped by this. I saw this in Iraq. Like, 98% of the population wants nothing to do with this. They just want to live their lives like normal.
Yeah.
But by like geographical lottery, they've been screwed, right? So what does that mean? How does that change people, their psyches, their choices? So I don't know. More than anything, this is kind of a dark love story. It's set during a war, but I don't really know if it's about war so much as it's just kind of about everyday humans doing the best they can.
I think I think what bothers me the most about this is that it feels like it's kind of drug on, and you kind of wonder, like, man, this was supposed to be bad. This was supposed to be really bad for Ukraine. This was supposed to be a really mighty Russian military that was coming in there to invade, and that maybe NATO wasn't going to be able to counter if they invaded too quickly. And it could have been that drawing line that starts a world war. Like, that's what this was hyped up to be. And then it turned into, well, this is taking a couple of months. What's going on? What does Putin not have his ducks in a row? And then now we're 2 years plus, right? So it kind of makes, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I'm kind of going, what's the end game here, guys?
Sure.
Why it just seems like a senseless war, and that we're throwing money at, and people are still suffering. But to me, if you're going to invade, if you fail, you back out and you tuck tail and back out. But it seems like it's going on for some reason, and you kind of wonder, like, is it because the politicians are wanting to just continuously throw money at it? Like, what's really going on?
There is a business side to this. There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you go back to the 2014 invasion, when Russia invaded Crimea and eastern Ukraine. Part of that is they want the mines, right? There's a lot of money in those mines. I will say that from the outset, Putin believes he can outlast the West, right? He believes that democracy is weak, that our attention span is short, and that you see this in the tactics, right? Sending human waves of prisoners I've interviewed people, Ukrainian soldiers, talked about on a tactical level. They'll mow down 30, 40 unarmed, uh, basically prisoners. But what the Russian commanders are doing is they're doing that on purpose to identify the hide positions for the machine guns, so then they can call for fire on those positions, right? So, like, completely different than the kind of tactical and operational training American military veterans get in terms of value of human life. On the Ukrainian side, something I do worry in this conversation gets lost is the idea of Ukrainian agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so much of this is because they've had various social uprisings, Maidan in 2013, the Orange Revolution in 2004, Kumcha in 2000. They've been trying, not necessarily to join NATO specifically, but trying to become more and more like the West, right? And Russia, for somewhat understandable reasons, does not want that. So there's the economic aspect of this, and I think Republicans and Democrats share a lot of in America share some blame on this. On the Republican side, like, it's caused a bit of a civil war within that party.
Oh,
On the
God.
Democratic side, I think
You are right.
on the Democratic side, like, the Biden administration's failed, by they're kind of always doing like these half measures, right? Either do something or don't, right?
Yeah,
When
I
Zelensky and
know.
his team say, give us this, don't give them half of everything. You're trying to overmanage. If they're an ally and they're saying we need this, and you've decided they're an ally, give it to them,
Yeah.
right? There was a real lost opportunity, I think, end of fall of 2022. In terms of momentum, right? They took back Kherson, and they could have pushed even further if we'd been consistently giving them what they wanted.
Yeah.
But there's kind of this hesitancy, like over management, and it's now it's costing Ukrainian lives. So that's part of the reason we're in this stalemate. And now, I mean, I hate to say it, but Putin's almost being proven correct, right? You see Russia saying we can just outlast them because they do. They have an advantage in personnel. They have an advantage in an industrial base. I do know this, though. With or without the West support, with or without America's support, Ukraine is going to keep fighting. I mean, for them, like, there is no kind of magic peace treaty, right? Because for them, they believe deep in their bones that Russia will turn Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa into Mariupol. They will kidnap their kids and send them to cultural re-education camps, right? Like, for them, like, there is no kind of magic peace button that I think a lot of us in the West want.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's very grim. Like when I came back in the last time we were over there was August. It was very grim now. I think it's even more grim now.
I'm sure
there's a deep sense of betrayal that's starting to set in Ukrainian society, not just towards America, but just towards Europe as well. So how does this end? I don't
that's
know.
My next question is how does
yeah,
this end?
I posed that to the most recent article I did. I just kind of posed that question to all kinds of different Ukrainians, people at the front, politicians, volunteers, kind of all over. I got a bunch of different answers. You know, some people are dead set that no, Crimea is Ukraine. We're going to fight till victory. Kind of, and they mean it. There's some of that sense isn't just political talking points.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we're barreling toward. This is just my opinion. I think we're barreling towards kind of an internationally imposed ceasefire, peace treaty, maybe, where Ukraine gives up a little bit of land out east. But that said, I don't think it's a long-term solution. I think that'll satisfy kind of temporary agendas, but both Ukraine and Russia believe that won't be the end of the war. So they'll continue to build up. It'll, best case scenario, maybe it becomes like a Korea DMZ type situation. Worst case scenario is just kind of like what happened in Ukraine and Russia before, right? Where there's kind of like a little bit of war going on out east, and they're just kind of waiting for the next blow up. But I think, just my opinion, I'm not even sure I agree with that, but it just kind of seems, reading the political tea leaves, that's kind of what we're barreling toward.
Man, I really wish it would just end, but I think you're right. I think if it ended in any kind of ceasefire, it would be temporary. I don't see the West agreeing with Ukraine giving up any kind of land necessarily, because I think that gives Putin a win, even if it's a temporary win. So I think it's a very touchy thing. Like, why is it taking so long? If you had this mighty military, Putin, how come this isn't over already? So I kind of call his bluff a little. Maybe I'm wrong in doing that, but I kind of go, if you really wanted it, why didn't you just take it back? It could have been over in a month or two.
He thought it would be. They got exposed pretty bad.
Yeah, big time. So I think the dangerous thing, and now what is it? Was it Finland or Sweden that just got signed into NATO recently?
But both, but I believe it was Sweden that just finally got ratified. Yeah,
right. Yeah, Hungary that I think finally signed it after 20-something months. So now they're in. Do you think Ukraine ever becomes part of NATO? I don't think so, just because I think that seals off Russia, and I think that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think that's when Putin gets to drastic measures and says, I do not want to be blockaded by NATO. If you do it, that's going to be the line that's drawn in the sand.
Right. I think that'll be a huge factor. On the other, like, it's hard to kind of it's kind of hard to reason with him, right? Like, the interview he gave to Tucker Carlson, I guess 2 weeks ago now, he mentioned Poland like 40 or 50 times. He's obsessed with Poland. They just added the Estonian, the woman prime minister to like their kill list, right? Because they consider the Balt, like he has these ambitions to reclaim this territory. How rational can we depend on him being, right? At times, over the course of his reign, he's behaved very rationally. In other cases, like this most recent invasion, it's some crazy shit. Like, so I don't know. I do know that the closer you get to the front there, the more serious they take. The less the NATO line seems to matter, and the more serious. There's entire companies in the International Legion made up of Poles, right? Because they consider this. Okay, yeah, they're a NATO country. Ukraine's not, but they know they're next, so they're already over there. All kinds of Baltics and Lithuanians and Latvians believe this is their war because they believe they're next.
Yeah.
So one interesting thing that's kind of been occurring very recently is at least parts of Europe are starting to take this seriously and starting to wonder, depending on how the American election shakes out, not just with our presidency, but with our Congress, like this might be on us. It's just kind of a lot of talk right now by Macron of France, but it's pretty tough talk. It's interesting. Hopefully Europe can finally actually rise to the moment to deal with a European war. Historically, that has not been the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do think, and it's just my opinion, but just kind of talking to people over there, and I don't think Putin would stop at Ukraine. I don't think if he were to win this, he would find some way, probably through some false flag operation, to find a reason to invade one of the Baltics or Poland, and then we'll see. Then we'll really see what NATO's made of, right? We'll see if Article 5 actually holds up.
Exactly. They have to act. One attack on one is an attack on all. So
that's what it says.
I think we take that seriously.
We do.
I don't know how well Europe will.
I agree.
And I question that, not just because I think because of the previous conflicts, and you look at the amount of money that the United States gives to UN and to NATO versus all these other countries, and you kind of go, hey, what the heck, guys? Like, why are we flipping the bill and you guys are not paying your fair share? And I think I know that's something Trump pushed back on, and it kind of shook things up, but he had a point. I mean, if you looked at the math,
I'm not a Trump guy at all, but he was right about that. He was.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think but I think also that standing up and saying, hey, like what's going on here, also kind of drew a line in the sand that I hope resonates going forward, that those eyes, somebody actually looked at those figures. So when it comes time to put up or shut up, like we know that we're going to do what we're supposed to do. And I think the world knows that. But Europe is going to have to act when Putin starts heading west, because they're going to have no choice but to, or they're just going to have to give it up.
Right. No, and I mean, Poland's going to fight. The Baltics are going to fight.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see about Germany. We will see about France.
Yeah.
Because those are the big countries there, and Germany's been dragged kicking and screaming. It seems like on every aspect of this entire conflict, but they're the industrial machine that can compete with Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So I really hope it doesn't come to this, but
Me too.
But we'll see.
What do you think? What do you think the future holds for this conflict if Biden gets another 4 years?
Biden were to get another 4 years, I think it would be kind of more of the same, in good ways and bad. I think Ukraine would be mostly able to hold the line. I think it would be kind of a slow bleed. Russia is starting to show some effects themselves. Like they're very good at posturing otherwise, but it's starting to impact their society. It really is. We saw it with Navalny's funeral. For Russian society to have that many people show up is kind of an act of civic protest. It's not what we as Americans are used to seeing. We're used to seeing, say what you mean, being loud and their society is a little different. Mm-hmm. They're not able to be that kind of open and defiant. So I think if you support Ukraine, given the options, and you believe in American support of Ukraine, I think Biden winning would be better, but not good, because they've dropped the ball because they've been afraid. It's frankly kind of a typical Democratic thing of like trying to do the right thing, but then getting afraid of unforeseen consequences and settling into half measures.
I think what I would like to see if Biden wins is, I think for Ukraine, Biden winning and then the Democrats having control of Congress is in Ukraine's best interest, because
100%.
That's when I think a lot of the funding and the support for them will go through a lot faster. The only reason why I don't like that is because I do think there needs to be an amount of accountability for what is being sent over there. If we're going to give billions and billions and billions of dollars at a time, okay, let's be smart about this and let's have some accountability for the dollars. And we're already really bad at that as our own government. So that's probably asking a whole lot. But I think that just makes common sense, especially when you're trying to get the American people to buy into this and understand what they're supporting. Mm-hmm. When you're sending billions of dollars over there and you're going, hold on, wait a minute. My grocery bill was over $100 this week. And it's not normally, but you're sending $1 billion over there. You're having a hard time getting the math to add up for folks. So I think you got to do something to help smooth that over a little bit. I think that's my opinion.
I agree. I show them where it's going. I mean, like the $61 package that's tied up in the House right now, I think like $40 billion, like 2/3 of that is actually going back to American defense contractors, so American jobs, to kind of like fill in the stockpile that.
Okay, so we were talking about the stockpile, the $61 billion bill that's in the Congress right now. You said $40 billion of it goes back to the military industrial sector?
Yeah, 2/3 of it is like earmarked to go back to American defense contractors that have kind of emptied their stockpiles to send like artillery shells over to Ukraine. But to your point, Democratic messaging ignored all that. It took Mitch McConnell to make that point when they were getting the bill pushed through the Senate to say, "Hey, this isn't just about supporting Ukraine, though it's a good cause. This is about American jobs. This is where your money's going, right? Like if you live in Alabama, just drive by the local Lockheed Martin plant, and you will see this being put to use." But it took McConnell to point that out, right? To make that case.
So, what do you think? Real quick, what do you think the future of Ukraine looks like if Trump gets reelected?
Trump gets reelected, it gets real murky. It'll be up to Europe. I think, without a doubt, Russia will see kind of a more pronounced, at least another attempt at an offensive by the Russian military to kind of take advantage. They are very good at timing, right? And trying to take more of the country. They want Kyiv. They want Odessa. I don't think Putin has any kind of ambitions on, say, like far western Ukraine, like where Lviv is. He considers that, he doesn't consider Ukraine a real country. It's like looking at a map from Catherine the Great era. That part of Ukraine, modern Ukraine, belonged to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? So I just think we'd probably, especially Trump with a Republican Congress, just entirely stay out of it. And then it's really on Europe. And I don't know, man. I don't know what Europe does in that situation. Because it would be it would be a real test in a way that we have not seen since 1939
Yeah.
in terms of those countries having to act by themselves.
I'd be curious
So
to see what Trump would do if he would just cut off funding altogether to Ukraine, which I don't know. I don't know if he would do that. I don't know if all the Republicans would be in favor of that either. I think a lot of them would, but I don't think. I think people are kind of misunderstand. I don't think they're against it. They're just they're for accountability, and I think that's fine. Um, I would like to see Trump stand up to Putin and say, "You got to end this. This has got to be done. You've been getting your butt handed to you for a couple of years now. I'm back in office. Things are good. What are you doing?" Frankly, I'd like to see Biden do that and his administration do that and stand up and say, "Listen, you didn't pull this crap when Trump was in office. Why did you wait and do it until I got into office? And do you think I'm going to do anything differently?" I think somebody needs to stand up to Putin. I don't care who it is.
I agree. I don't. It's interesting because Trump part of his appeal for a lot of people is that he's kind of unpredictable, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of that businessman. You're not quite sure what you're going to get. Historically, he is, and this was I have friends that voted for him for this reason is he is not going to get us involved in any kind of foreign wars. That is kind of one thing he's been consistent about is he's just not interested in kind of old school American intervention. I strongly disagree with him on this, but like that is part of his appeal to people. And like part of his first impeachment was related to Ukraine. Was that conversation with Zelensky when he was like trying to feel him out, and there was debate about was it Trump being Trump? Was he actually trying to shake him down? It's I read the transcript. It's really hard to say.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I personally have a hard time seeing him actively caring about this. But I don't know. He is unpredictable.
Well, when the man walked into North Korea, I mean, boy, that that sent a message. Regardless of what you think of it, it certainly sent a message.
He is. Yeah. No, he did. He
That
did.
was
And
bold.
they exchanged. They're pen pals, right? They exchanged some letters to.
Did they?
They did. They did. Yeah.
Oh, I
It
didn't
was one
know
of the.
that.
Yeah, it was one of the things the FBI let him keep. I think when they raided Mar-a-Lago was
They let him keep
looking
those.
for. Yeah, they let him keep the personal dispatches from Kim Jong Un.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's funny.
it is. It
But
is like say what you will about the man is funny. The man
yeah.
makes me laugh. There's no
Oh
doubt about
yeah.
it.
I miss him for that. That's for sure. Just because, there's a comedian Shane Gillis. Have you heard of him?
Yes, yeah,
Oh my God.
he's great. Yeah, yeah,
He's fantastic. His impression is fantastic, but just his reenactment of when we killed the leader of ISIS and Trump walked out of there and did that speech was just,
I
for
saw that.
one, the reenactment that he does is great. But then when you go back and actually watch the real video, you realize like it wasn't that far from the truth. Like how Trump was just a lot different than like Obama and
Oh,
Bush.
there's that video where they splice Obama announcing Bin Laden's death.
Oh
And have
yes.
you seen this one? Yeah, that one cracks me up. It's like very
Yeah.
official political language, and then Trump being like, "He died like a dog." What the fuck?
In a
Yeah,
way,
no,
Trump was our nuclear deterrent. Like people just understood like that's what America is going to put up there in front of the podium. Like maybe we shouldn't test the waters right now. Like this guy's going to come out and talk trash on you. Like he just won the NBA finals, and so I
yeah,
wouldn't test
no.
him.
I mean, again, definitely not my man. But like when he killed Soleimani, the Iranian general, I was like, okay, all right, this is only you were kind of crazy enough to do this, and like a very bad man that has a lot of American blood on his hands. I am certainly not going to bemoan this. This is a good thing for our country tonight.
Yeah. So what can people do to support the people of Ukraine? Not necessarily support the war. Let's say
Sure, sure,
this,
sure.
support the people of Ukraine, because that's a lot about what your book is about. That's what you've gone over there and done in your time. People supporting the Ukrainians who are going through this, just as the innocent Iraqis and innocent Afghanis have done in the last 2 decades. How can they support the local Ukrainian people?
So there's two organizations that I try to point people towards to at least check out. The first is Razum for Ukraine. It's a Ukrainian American organization with ties in communities all over Ukraine. So your any money or donations you give to that organization are going straight to the teams that are going out, to whether it's food kitchens, going out to these recently liberated villages, donating blankets, buying school supplies for kids who are having to take classes in subway tunnels, which is something that's been happening particularly out east in the country because of the constant air raid sirens. They are, the ideal kind of organization to be actually reaching Ukrainian civilians. Another organization that might be of interest to your listeners is called Operation White Stork. It's a small group of American military veterans that go out to the front lines and hand out state-of-the-art tourniquets, medical tourniquets to Ukrainian military units. It's not a NATO country. They're behind with some of these supplies in many ways.
That's a good point.
I was out there, and you would see straight up soldiers carrying like 1989 Soviet era tourniquets on them, right? And anybody that's spent any time in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Syria, that golden hour makes to get a wounded soldier back to a field hospital makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And these are straight shooters. These are people, guys that you and I served alongside with, who are literally driving out to the front lines, dodging artillery fire to hand these off themselves. So they're real straight shooters, and I'll certainly vouch for them. And just another way, as a reader, like check out Ukrainian authors.
That's a
You
good
don't just have
point.
to read my book. Like Artem Chapai is a Ukrainian soldier who's written some really strong stuff. Andrei Kurkov is a real prominent. He was born in Russia but considers himself Ukrainian and has written some really tremendous literature about this kind of like the cultural divide and why he and so many others feel so strongly about supporting Ukraine as a nation. So and they've been translated in English. There's plenty that are going to be translated in English in the years to come. But it's just kind of something to like, I don't know, just taking the time to read a little bit and like push back against some of kind of the easy talking points that is it's very easy, I think, sometimes in America to think that we control everything, we run everything.
Mm-hmm.
But just hearing from Ukrainians talk about their lives or their history, I don't know. It was real helpful to me getting to know more about this war and the long imperial history of Russia trying to control Ukraine and trying to make Ukraine part of its empire. When not all, but a vast majority, not all, but a vast majority of Ukrainians want to be their own thing. They just kind of want to be left alone.
Yeah. So Daybreak is out now. You can go pick it up. You can find out even more about the Ukraine, what's going on in the ground, and get into the characters that Matt has. Matt, what else is in store for like the future? What else are you working on?
Oh gosh, so I'm based here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've recently started a story, kind of strange, kind of American tradition, but like this is one of the biggest places in the states for Afghan refugees, and I want to write a story, a journalism story about what that's been like for them, everyday Afghan people, all of a sudden in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like, and it's been interesting. And some people are adjusting very well. Some are really struggling. The kid. My wife's an assistant principal in the area, and by and large, the kids are doing pretty well. amazing. What you can imagine what it was like trying to find a Pashtun translator in Oklahoma those first days, but they've done it. They've done it, and watching everyday Oklahomans rise to the occasion to help out has been amazing. In other ways, it's kind of depressing. You have ex special operations soldiers, really committed military men who devoted 15 years to fighting the Taliban. Now they're here and driving Ubers, and that's hard. That's a hard thing. So I think with like a lot of what I write, just kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of the human experience. Here 20, 30 years, we're going to have little Kabul here in Oklahoma, and it's kind of an interesting thing watching develop.
Yeah. So where can they go to find out more about you, read some more of your articles and your literature, and get your books?
My website's mattgallagherwriter.com. All the information's on there. I'm on Twitter or X at Matt Gallagher 0, Instagram at Matt Gallagher 0, and just drop me a line. Check out my work, and if you're interested, great. If not, that's okay. Drop me a line too. I try to have even my arguments, I try to keep a friendly tone to them, because these are big, messy, complicated topics. And part of the beauty of our country is that we are able to openly disagree with them. And,
sure. Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Like, one of the best things, I'm so grateful for my time in the military for a lot of reasons, but this is one of them. Is some of my best friends disagree with me about a lot of this stuff, but we're able to have a normal civil conversation about it. And like, I remind them that not the other side isn't just this, and they remind me the same thing. And that's what makes this big, beautiful mess of a country go.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think we're slowly coming together as Americans and realizing that both parties have really screwed up, and we're not so much pointing fingers at each other anymore, as we're pointing fingers at each other, but saying, well, your party did this and your party screwed this up. And then we're going, well, wait a minute. They're both screwing up equally. Like, they're both doing us wrong. So we're I think we're slowly unifying together and saying, hey, this political stuff is BS, and they're kind of pulling the wool over our eyes for like the last time. And I think unfortunately, it's a beautiful thing. It's horrible because the politicians and the politics that are supposed to be taking care of us are crumbling and falling apart. But it's good that we can sit here and have conversations like this and say things that maybe we both don't agree with, but it's good knowledge. It's good vision from the other side, from another point of view, so that you can educate yourself too. Because I think it also shows that, we're not so different. We're not so in such disagreement like what the media and the both parties try to make it look like, that we're just constantly butting heads, because we're not. Me and you have agreed on a lot of things tonight, and a few things we've disagreed upon, but that doesn't mean anything at all. It just means, you know what, hey, we're not so far apart than what they make us think we are.
No, and it's like remembering that is a vital thing, and lowering the temperature just a little bit to have the space to disagree that's one of the things that I took away from Ukraine is how lucky we are, really.
Yeah.
Like how lucky we are to have a society and culture where we're able to have conversations like this. And that's something I just kind of wish Republicans or Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whatever, Americans of all politics, like, just appreciate what we have a little bit more,